Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I've got another deck profile for you. This time it is an updated Infernoble list, but this time I'm playing the Azamina variant. I played it at a 3v3 with me and two of my friends. They were playing Centurion in player A, and we had our anchor as Fire King Snake Eye Azamina, and we ended up going completely undefeated for the whole event. My personal record was 4-2 for matches, and yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into it. Just a quick shout out before I begin this profile as well. I want to shout out the Infernoble Discord for helping me with ideas to bounce off of, giving me different advice on cards to play, and I do want to give a shout out to I believe a player named Andrew Sullivan for his deck profile. He posted his profile a couple weeks back for a regional top that he did, and it really inspired me to try something different from the deck. Especially for Azamina variants, which I'll show off the difference here in a couple of minutes. So yeah, I'll go ahead and start off here with the main deck monsters. Nothing really crazy here for these three. The Renaud, Ricardetto, Gear Free, these are all pretty standard at these ratios. Wouldn't really change these at all. And then for the level 4s, we've got Turpin Magus. Again, wouldn't change these at all. Magus helps you to only play one ofs instead of having to play multiples of names, like recycling everything back. Helps you to shuffle names into the deck once you've thinned out everything to draw into hand traps, which have come up a couple times. And of course, Turpin is just an insane extender, so gotta play him. And then a difference here from most Infernoble Azamina lists is we're playing the Oliver. Essentially, the concept here is that he's an extender that doesn't require you to commit resources to the field, like things like Turpin does, because you have to have something that's equipped on your field, or Renaud requires you to control a fire warrior. So this being able to send cards as a free extender is really nice, and of course just being another level 1 tuner that you can summon to go for synchro summons is pretty solid as well. His protection effects came up like a small handful of times in theory. Like I think there was one game that I lost where I had equipped this to an SP and my opponent wasn't able to use Engraver to force out the SP, but it didn't really matter because they just went battle phase, ran it over, and I think I ended up losing that game. But I played against Ubel, that was Link Kashtira card specifically, and choosing to go for Oliver on my Charles that was on field. I believe I only had one since I went second that game, so just having that to make sure that if they had like Fenrir and stuff like that to try to bait out the Charles interaction, that I could just have this on field and hold my interruptions. So yeah, this card was fine. Doesn't come up a whole lot. I may try to go for the Bradamante, which I'm not playing in this list. I may try to slot her back into the deck. I was between essentially these two cards as my last Infernoble name, so I was bouncing between the two. For the event, I went with Oliver. For locals, I went with Bradamante. And in theory, I think Bradamante was slightly better because it can do a 1-card combo with the Azamina cards. And I think there was, for like a 2-card combo hand, I could use this to get a second Charles on field when I otherwise couldn't because I had this. But yeah, I think you could do either or. For this, I wanted to focus on strong 2-card combos, so that's why I decided not to go with the Bradamante, and instead we're opting for 3 Ogier. He's not a true starter since he won't do anything by himself, but Ogier is one of those cards that when you open with a bunch of other really good cards in your deck, that it isn't really it's not that bad of a card to lead with. Pretty much all 5 of these cards that I have here are strong cards to open with Ogier. So yeah, this deck focusing on the strong 2-card combos rather than having just a singular 1-card combo was very nice. Other things about 3 Ogier is post side, I can essentially just go down to 1 and I'd be playing the same number of Ogier that I was, of course, if I was just playing the 1 going second. So I wouldn't have to worry about things like, oh, I lost this game because I went second in game 2 and 3 and I opened like double Ogier. Instead, I can just eliminate that problem and always be playing the 1 Ogier post side since he's so searchable. And I want to make room to play other non-engine. But of course, if I'm going first, then I have the advantage that I'm just playing 3-0 gear. Yeah, that's pretty much it for all the Infernoble names. I wouldn't really change them, bouncing between, of course, the Oliver and the Bradamante, but not much else to say there. Extra consistency cards, of course, the 3 Heritage Rhoda. Nothing more to say about this. Heritage is an insane card going second, so definitely keep this in at 3. The Noble Arms cards, of course, the 2 Museum, and then the 1 of each Noble Arm. I think most people are down to 2 Museums now. I pretty much agree with it. I think there's too many cards in the format that Museum will lose to, or sometimes we just like not open a normal summon, and so this card doesn't really do anything because you don't have a card to normal summon, or you'll have to normal summon a hand trap, but then your search off of Durandal won't be anything that can actually get you to play the game. So opening Museum plus a hand trap is kind of a fake combo, so that's why I'm only playing 2. And of course you want to search this out over the course of your combo, so then opening, in theory, opening Museum plus combo can get you to both Noble Arms from your deck, but it means if you're drawing into multiples, then it is kind of dead. Or sometimes you'll open like Museum plus an equip, and then the Museum that you search off of Angelica won't actually be able to get you anything unless you specifically put Magus into rotation to shuffle it back. So yeah, definitely play 2 Museum. I've heard about going down to 1, but I think 2 is great. It's one of those cards that you don't mind opening, but you'd rather search it out over the course of your combo. And then, of course, mentioned Azamina cards, so the 2 Witch, 3 Wanted, 1 Deception, 1 Original, and 1 Hollowed Azamina. There's not much to say about these. I'll just go over these 2 real quick since they are a little newer. Deception is a continuous spell. You tribute a monster from your hand or face-up field to add an Azamina card, and then it has another effect that if a monster is sent to your opponent's graveyard while you control an Azamina fusion monster, you can make your opponent lose 15 and you gain 15. This effect doesn't really come up too much since you're just sending this to the graveyard. And then its last effect is in the end phase. If it's in your graveyard because it was sent while face up, you can set it. And Hollowed Azamina is the quote-unquote fusion spell for the deck. It allows you to summon an Azamina fusion by revealing a Sinful Spoils for every 4 levels that monster had. And then that is treated as a fusion summon. And if it's in your graveyard, you target an Azamina that's in your graveyard or on your field, bounce that to the extra deck, and then return this card to your hand. The fusion summon aspect is not once per turn, so typically over the course of your combo, you're sending the Deception to the graveyard to summon the Search Azamina, and then sending it to the graveyard, returning Azamina to your hand, returning the fusion to the extra deck from your graveyard usually, and then sending the original Sinful Spell to some of the other. So those are those. Yeah, the fusion aspect, like I mentioned, not once per turn, but the graveyard effect is, so just keep that in mind. And then Deception also, it only triggers when Sunball is face up on your field, so it's a good idea if you wanted to use this again to activate another copy of Hollowed Azamina that you just flip this up first. Sometimes I forget that, and sometimes it comes up. Besides that, for the rest of this engine, I was playing multiples of Deception, 2 Deception, and 3 Diabellstar for a list I played at my OTS, but I think shrinking it down to these ratios makes a lot more sense, since sometimes I was going down to 1 Witch post side anyway, but more importantly is sometimes opening multiples of these cards together can be kind of awkward. Like Wanted Witch is always kind of a weird one, or you're opening like Hollowed plus Diabellstar or Original plus Diabellstar, so then you don't get like a ton of value out of it. So that's why I decided to just go down to 2 Witch, because of course just seeing multiples of Witch really sucks. You just want to see the 1, and of course you're already playing 3 more with the 3 Wanted, that which you definitely want to see. And then Deception is kind of the same thing. It's not a terrible card to open, but because it plays into a bunch of hand traps and you lose value off of it getting negated because it tributes a monster for cost, I think the 1 Deception is fine. And of course it resets itself. Or even worst case, sometimes if you want the spell trap zone, so you choose not to reset this in end phase, you can recycle it with wanted, or sometimes you don't even need the Azamina cards to kill your opponent on the crackback. So like I said, didn't really want any more of these for this deck specifically. Some decks might want more deception. I don't think it's necessary for this. And the rest of the deck is just going to be the non-engine that me and my team decided on. So it's 3 Droll, 3 Veiler, 3 Impulse, 3 Ash, and then 3 Imperm. These bottom 9 here are pretty standard for Infernoble Azamina lists, since you can just play without the attribute restriction from Impulse, since the only things you really play that conflict with Impulse are just going to be hand traps, which are these ones up here. We decided to go with Droll just because we figured it would be good into a majority of the room, which it pretty much was, since a lot of people were on like combo decks and rogue decks that will lose to Droll. So I think this was a great pick. And then Veiler, just so we have more targeting negation, because Imperm is not that bad into the current format. And of course, just having 3 more copies of Veiler isn't terrible either. There's some games where it sucks to open Veiler Impulse, and you have to sequence in a way where you want to use the Veiler first before you use the Impulse, or sometimes you just, the Impulse is so good that you just drop it first, and then the Veiler can just be discard fodder for later. Impulse is an insane card this format, definitely a strong pickup if you don't have it already. So that is the hand trap lineup. And I guess real quick, I'll also mention that the other hand traps we were considering were like Ghost Ogre or DD Crow in the main. I don't think those cards are terrible. Those could be replacements for cards like Impulse if you don't have them. You can try those out. But I think for this event, this entire lineup was perfect and I wouldn't change it. So we'll go over the extra now. Pretty standard stuff for the Synchro lineup. Not changing these at all. These are perfect at these ratios. Even when I was getting my monsters ripped by Unicorn, they oftentimes people will snipe the Angelica, but if I have the requisite materials to go for Captain Roland, then I can just go for that and climb into Charles. Or even if I can't, then I can just crack the board with the rest of my deck, which doesn't require Charles to be in rotation on all cards like gear free cards like SP, etc. Speaking of the Azamina monsters, they're here. I'll mention these two since I talked about the spell. Murcielago will add an Azamina, or sorry, it'll add a Sinful Spoils spell on Fusion Summon. And then when it dies, it also adds a Sinful Spoils, I believe, spell or trap. Just a spell card. It also has an effect that makes your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack and defense, but that never comes up because you're just trying to link this off. So in the combo, this will add original Sinful Spoils. You'll link this off. Hallowed Azamina will return this to your extra deck, and then you'll summon this monster, Ilia Sylvia. And this one is essentially an Omni Negate for any card or effect by attributing itself. It doesn't destroy, and it only negates effects, which make it bad into like field spells, continuous spells, and that type of stuff. But still a great card to add as an extra interruption to your field, since losing Baron, you don't have an Omni Negate in your deck anymore, and this is essentially the closest replacement that you have. And plus, since it sends itself to the graveyard, if you have Hallowed Azamina, you can, during a follow-up turn, essentially add this back to your extra, and then add the Hallowed Azamina to your hand. And then if you ended up actually resetting the Deception from last turn, then you can bring you can use the Hallowed Azamina to either bring out the Ilia Sylvia, or you can bring out the Murcielago again for an additional search. So that's what I really like about this engine, is that it's just so recursive, because everything just recycles itself over and over. So you have an insane grind game no matter what variants you're playing. Those are the fusions for this. And then IPSP. IP is not super standard. I think it's kind of like iffy if people are playing this card or not, and I was really skeptical on it, but it came up against Chimera Fiendsmith where they Fool lost me in response to Hallowed Azamina, so I got out the Murcielago rather than the Sylvia. I think I maybe should have brought out the Sylvia instead, but it was nice to have the original for follow-up, essentially, was my argument. But anyway, I was able to end on IP and essentially only give them 2 draws. And then it was IP gear free plus a rivalry. And having that set up against Chimera Fiendsmith was insane, especially when they had Ultimate Slayer plus Triple Tactics. I was able to flip the rivalry, chain the IP in order to dodge it into the SP, get rid of their sequence that they sent for the Ultimate Slayer, and then I had Gearfried as well. And they chained Triple Tactics, and of course tag out both of them, and then give them a Warrior monster. They can't make anything, they have to set one pass, so that's why this was great. I think IP otherwise is really nice. That's having part of the end board. Of course, the down pointing arrows is nice, so I don't have to worry about not having the arrows to do anything. And yeah, this is great because you get full value out of the SP now instead of just leaving the SP on the board, and the only thing it can do is the tag out. So that's those. The double Link Charles, of course, standard as always. The 2 Charmers, these ones come up the most in this format, of course, and the deck has plenty of fire monsters, of course, and then you have the Diabell Star, which you can steal from your opponent's graveyard with the Dark. Or I think I was usually in matchups where I was making Dark, I was just taking other stuff and linking it off for SP or the Promethean Princess as well. So those are those, and of course if I was playing DD Crow, then I could add that off Dark. Or I was playing Magician Souls previously in a list, and some people aren't expecting you to be playing like something like Souls, so of course if they pop this, then you can get pretty value search target off of that. Relinquished Anima, I did cut this for one list, and otherwise I don't think I would cut this card again. This card is really nice. Not even really for the effect. It came up in a regional that I was using the effect, and I was able to go like Turpin Summon and Gearfried Banish the equip. But otherwise, just having this card as a way to turn any of your level 1s into a dark monster, so you can make dark, and you can steal like an SP, or yeah, you can steal an SP, or you can steal like a Diabell Star or something like that. I wouldn't cut this just because of how many times that comes up. Or like because it's an extra deck monster, of course, you just use that to make SP. And a lot of people are playing stuff like Floodgates and annoying things, so just having Ogi or Renaud turn into this, get rid of that, and try to play. It is weird because, of course, SP has the sideways arrows, but if you're able to use the SP tag out, then you can free up the EMZ. And then, of course, the 2 Xyz monsters. I only made Baguzka once at a locals. And I was just able to tie the game. I wasn't even able to win. But the card is just there for some insurance into Full Loss or Shifter or Droll or whatever. It is kind of hard to make rank 4s in this deck, but I think just having this for insurance is always nice. Or I can also just make the SP for insurance as well. And then Dempsey comes up for all those like really weird combos, usually ones that involve Museum, like Witch getting negated and then you open Museum as well. Or having like Witch, Ogier, and stuff like that. Or the 1-card Heritage / Museum line going second, of course, uses the Dempsey. So it doesn't come up a lot, but when it comes up, it's one of those cards that if you played this specifically, then that's the only way you could combo. So that's that. I'll go and move on to the side deck. Just 6 more hand traps here. So the 3 Purlia, the 3 Ogre. Purlia wasn't really resolving a ton for me, but it does force your opponent to play kind of awkward, so in a way it is kind of doing its job, especially if your opponent doesn't negate it with something like Ash. And then Ogre is like kind of okay. I'm like 50-50 on it. Of course it conflicts with Impulse, but then there's some matchups where it's like really strong into like Fire King, or sometimes you can hold this for your turn going second. If your opponent has Desiree, you can just use this to get rid of the Desiree. And it won't have anything equipped, so it won't be able to negate. If you have something on field, they will be sending it, but if you have enough extension to play through the removal, then that's more than worth it for me. Roland Ring, pretty standard. I know a lot of people are like iffy on this still because there's some decks that just play a ton of hand traps, they don't play any breakers, but I'm specifically playing this for decks that I know are going to be loaded up on a bunch of breakers going second. And some of the breakers that people will be siding into this deck are really annoying. Things like Super Poly, Droplet, Ultimate Slayer, which is weird because it's sensor cost, but I think otherwise this package is fine. And plus this can also be an equip to trigger Angelica, and you can hold on to another equip, so Roland's not that bad either. 3D Barrier. I sided this in. I realized it's actually not terrible into Tenpai if they go first specifically, which ended up happening in my round 1 game 3. Was if they made me go first, I couldn't play, but because I knew they were on Heatwave and I figured they probably wanted to go first just to like maximize on it, they opened Shifter as well, that I could essentially just I normaled Ogier and then I just punched into the seals, they bounced it, I ashed the summon from deck, and then I said like imperm D barrier, and I just wasn't able to die. So just having this is really nice, no matter if you're going first or second against Tenpai. And then, yeah, otherwise I didn't really use this card too much. There was a theory into using this against Yubel, and just flipping this up and draw and calling Fusion, which means they can't do Fiendsmith stuff, and it means they can't do Phantom to try to give them some insurance to make sure all their plays go through. So the theory was there, and I played Yubel twice, but I didn't end up seeing this card ever. Called by the Grave, of course, just solid going first or second depending on the matchup. Just 2 Cosmic since I couldn't find the room to find the third. I could play the third Cosmic in the called by slot or the last slot here, but I think 2 is fine. There's not really a ton of back row decks in this format right now, and even if there were more, I could just play like the Lightning Storms, but I chose this specifically because it was chainable and because it was a quick play, and then I can set it if my opponent's playing like a back row deck and I'm going first. I could just snipe some of their sets and end phase. And the last card I mentioned before was Rivalry, and I kind of underrated this card for a while, and I was told not really to play this card because there were just better card, and of course this takes up a back row slot, and Infernoble kind of hogs up all the back row slots with all its equips, but this card is insane in the matchups that it is good in. Like I used this in the Chimera Fiendsmith matchup. They, like I mentioned, they went Ultimate Slayer, target the IP. I chained Rivalry, and then I was able to chain the IP now to make the SP and just leave them so that even if they did talent stake, which they did end up doing, that they're not able to do anything because now they have Warrior on field and they're not playing a Warrior deck. This came up at locals, I think against like Sprite, just locking them out of their Thunder monsters because the Sprites themselves are all Thunders, but of course everything else is not a Thunder that they're playing. And then like Kashtira Fiendsmith, if I can lock them into Kashtiras and they don't put Fenrir on board, or if I was playing against Yubel, I didn't side this in even though they were playing Kashtira monsters, but that's another theory there, essentially, that you can lock them into the type that their deck isn't because they're playing all these supplementary engines. Yeah, this card is great. It does seem to have some confliction because of course my deck is not all Warriors, and sometimes people side this card into me because it's really annoying if I like lead with something like Diabell Star and then they flip Wanted on res, or if I have like the Azamina fusions on field, then obviously I'll be locked into illusions. But because Hollowed Azamina can target in Azamina on field, I can bounce this back, which is really the only one that's annoying. But if I'm Warrior locked and I have Charles up, then I can just pop this with my own Charles, or I have like Original sending the Rivalry if I have nothing on field, so it's not the end of the world for sure. But this card is, in the matchups, this card is strong and it's insane. So yeah, that's the whole profile. I will try to, I had some people ask me about the Fiendsmith list that I posted about a month ago. I will try to film a video with test hands on the deck and kind of explain like what it's doing a little more in depth and why. There's a ban list coming up, so I will wait for what happens with the ban list, and if the variant is still playable, I'll make a test hand video and a video explaining that deck, and I can also try to make a test hand video on this specific build as well, since there are Fiendsmith Azamina variants actually of this deck, or there's like just the Fiendsmith that I played in the past, or this one is going to be just the Azamina. So yeah, I appreciate it again for watching. Again, shout outs to the Infernoble Discord for giving me the confidence to pilot this specific build, and of course shout out to that player I mentioned before, Andrew Sullivan. He's insane list again. This list is pretty similar to his, but yeah, just great ideas all around. So I appreciate it again once more. All right, peace.